Hello everyone, welcome back to GGN. This is part 3 for this news report today. It's Thursday, May... Hello everyone, welcome back to GGN. This is part 3 for this news report today. It's Thursday, May 9th, 2013. I'm Darko. My website is ggnonline.com, and on YouTube my channels are ddarko2012 and ddarko2013. I usually have the links in there, and they should be posted, if not today, then tomorrow, in YouTube's video description. So, the U.S. is involved militarily, directly, or advising in 74 countries. So we're talking about Afghanistan, we got Iraq, Libya, they never actually leave. While combat troops have been withdrawn from Iraq, and Afghan war now involves less U.S. troops all the time. The U.S. is still involved in either fighting or helping some struggle thought to be useful in the war on terror, which includes drone bombing civilians or innocents. Says the war on terror is used as a justification to project U.S. power and develop relationships with numbers of national military forces throughout the globe. It then goes on down here talking about how under the Obama regime they've embraced targeted assassinations and expanded drone attacks and special forces far beyond those of the Bush era. So, is that better? I don't think so. The EU's out-of-control intelligence services that don't exist. Brussels, the center of gravity of the European Union, and NATO headquarters, not only teams with lobbyists, diplomats, military personnel, bureaucrats, politicians, Americans, and other weird characters from around the world, but also with spies. It says Brussels is one of the largest spy capitals in the world. He guesstimated that there would be several hundred plying their trade at any one time, chasing after a broody array of topics from trade issues to security policies. That was said by the head of the Belgian State Security Services. And you're going to laugh, he said he was in the CIA. It says here from Reuters, one childhood friend said in a music session with Castro, who was born in Puerto Rico, suddenly turned bizarre. So this, of course, is the people in Ohio, the abductions that were there for like almost a decade. It says, Ariel was in my garage probably 5 or 6 years ago. We were recording a song, an idea that we had. It says here that, and you know you're going to laugh when he said he was in the CIA, and I don't know if he was joking or not, but it's the way he said it, how serious he said it. I didn't know what he was capable of. That just put me on the defense, and I just started stepping away, it says Papa. 45-year-old father of 6 who said he's known Castro brothers since childhood. Emily Castro, 25, is serving 25 years in an Indiana prison on attempted murder for slashing the throat of her 11-year-old daughter in 2007. Home owned by Saudi government near CIA raided for possible human trafficking. Immigration officials have removed 2 domestic workers from a Northern Virginia home owned by the government of Saudi Arabia as part of an investigation into a report of human trafficking. So I wonder if this was maybe possibly part of this human trafficking by the government. Who knows? Cleveland police digging for bodies of possible aborted babies from women captive for a decade. Police in Cleveland are searching a property for possible aborted babies after finding 3 women who had been kidnapped and held as sex slaves for a decade or more. It says investigators say the dirt in the backyard appeared to have been disturbed. Police believe the women had been pregnant as many as 5 times, but only found 1 child on the premises. So there's a 10-year search. It took them 10 years to find it. And it basically ended with a neighbor who heard the screams through the door. So, I mean, this goes to show you what's going on with the fabric of our society. Mothers, slitting the throats of their 11-month-old, something like this going on and nobody knowing in the community. It's insane. Obama admits PIA's charge of CIA human trafficking. Reuters, after interviewing President Isaias Afwerki in 2008, it runs a story with a headline reading, "The Eritrean leader blames CIA plot for youth exodus." The Reuters report went on by saying that Eritrea accused the CIA and other Western agencies on Tuesday of luring young people away from the Red Sea state in a plot to weaken the nation seen as a threat to U.S. interests in the region. Again, your interest, my interest? No, we have no interest. We're talking about global corporations that claim U.S. Tax status, which then, of course, they don't even pay taxes. It is an orchestrated, organized operation financed by the CIA, says the president. Says we have evidence, we know what's going on in terms of tempting people, trying to facilitate them to cross the border. Police say U.S. Navy petty officer arrested in California for pimping 17-year-old girl. So the petty officer stationed in California is charged with sexually assaulting a 17-year-old girl and forcing her to have sex with multiple men. According to the Fresno Bee, the 32-year-old was arrested April 17th. Apparently, he had met the teenager on a social networking site. Air Force's Sexual Assault Prevention Chief arrested for sexual assault. It says here that the Pentagon is scheduled to release new figures showing a continuing rise in sexual assaults in the military, 6% increase from basically 2012 to previous years. Sergeant who killed 5 troops at Baghdad clinic grew paranoid in weeks leading up to slayings. So the Sergeant John Russell grew increasingly paranoid in the days before he killed 5 fellow U.S. service members in Baghdad at a Baghdad combat stress clinic. Soldiers who knew him testified today. So he believed that his unit was trying to kick him out of the army. Was one of the reasons his commander referred him to counseling instead of discipline. And talking about counseling and stuff like that, remember that article that I covered a while back about the anti-suicide or suicide prevention classes, and the guy that was partaking in part of it as a, what do they call it, a concerned friend or something like that. What did he do? He went into his truck and killed himself, and they said the guy had no problems, no financial issues, no marital issues, nothing. Almost like it promoted it. Much like just really early preschool sexual education, promoting it. Facebook page promoting, even this stuff about rape out in India and all that, like, I think they do that to not just keep people in fear, but also to get that idea out there, to promote it, just part of programming. And they had one girl that was like literally jumped out of a hotel room. Facebook page because people were knocking on her door. Facebook page promoting violence against female Marines reappears mocking Congress. Facebook page that glorified violence against women in the military was shut down. Said many of the pictures imply women only advance professionally by performing sexual favors and otherwise promote the idea that women are inferior and only useful as sexual objects and sandwich makers. It says the military cannot eradicate sexual assault without fundamentally changing its approach by not having women in there. No, it's including its tolerance of participation in these kinds of websites. So again, this is what I believe they were put there for. They were put there to be basically sex objects for other military members, mostly male-dominated, as prostitutes, basically. And I've talked about this personally. I would say about 80% of the females that I encountered or knew while I was in the Marine Corps moved up and advanced faster than they did their male counterparts, and they were usually lazy and did carry their weight, and they did use their womanhood to advance. I saw it. So I mean, people could say that, oh, that's just being intolerant, Darko, but whatever. It's for the most part. I mean, unless you're in like in a very defensive position to be in, where your whole culture is under attack. I really don't see women being in combat roles. They shouldn't be in the military. That's my own personal belief. This is promoted because it does anything, whether it's the mixing of bloodlines and races and multiculturalism, female leaders for everything now, and they promote that. Whatever turns the old order or the old way of our society functioning, turning it completely opposite and creating all this chaos. It's just another way of controlling people, controlling masses of people. U.S. to announce $100 million more aid for Syrian refugees. We're just talking about creating refugees, mixing the bloodlines, creating chaos. This is what it's all about. The U.S. plans to provide an additional $100 million in aid to Syrian refugees that have fled the nation to camps in neighboring Jordan, Turkey, and Lebanon. 108 Morris goes over this concept a lot in depth, and I agree with him completely about the creating refugees and getting open immigration and diluting whatever culture was there. This is for political control of the entire planet. You're always okay, and that was my web browser Firefox crashing right when I was getting into my point. So now this is about a half hour later after uploading the 9 minutes part, and encoding it and re-recording it. Here I am back at the 10-minute mark to hopefully flush out my point I was trying to make. Migration on course to change Britain's demography. So, new academic study says Britain will become one of the world's most ethnically diverse countries in less than 40 years. So they found that the proportion of minority groups living in the UK will increase from 10% in 2006 to 40% by 2050. They said if the current trends continue, the so-called majority ethnic group in the UK, white British, will become a minority before 2070. It says migration has become the primary driver of these changes in demographics in most high-income countries and remains so. It says on current trends, European populations will become more ethnically diverse, with the possibility that today's majority ethnic groups will no longer compromise a numerical majority in some countries. The professor said part of the reason behind the decline in white British members of the population is declining birth rates. The continuation of these trends in low fertility countries would eventually lead to the majority ethnic group becoming a minority of the national population. This is from back in January. UK cannot afford EU open borders any longer. It says there could be a potential disaster in Britain if the country does not stop open door access to British borders. It says here Britain will be unable to stop the tidal flood of new immigrants because the government's hands are tied and it cannot stop restrictions being lifted without tearing up a treaty signed with Bulgaria and Romania when they joined the EU in 2007. Back in 2004, predicted fewer than 20,000 Eastern Europeans would arrive, but the Office for National Statistics figure shows more than 600,000 were working in Britain last year. New York City considers allowing non-citizens to vote in local elections. They could be the first city in the U.S. to grant non-citizens the right to vote in municipal elections. Then you have this nice piece of journalism. Only immigrants can save us from pensioners. Record numbers of Britons are retiring, and there's only one way we're realistically going to be able to afford it. The best way to avoid fiscal disaster is not to hold criminal banks liable for their actions. No, it's to ensure that the number of people working in the UK and paying taxes rises. And we need to do this, it says, and to do this we need immigration. It goes on and talks about the birth rate falling because of the eugenics. I mean, this is blatantly obvious what's going on here. About they have to keep the number of those immigrants high enough to fund those in retirement. Heritage Foundation immigration study is exercising Republican racism. This is from Raw Story. This is Rachel Maddow. So she talked about the futility of attempting to do minority outreach when your party's platform is openly hostile to non-white Americans. She highlighted a study by the Heritage Foundation that said Latino immigrants should therefore be admitted to the U.S. only sparingly because their supposedly lower brain power will cost the country trillions of dollars. The Heritage Foundation is a, quote, right-wing think tank, a foundation established at the Intellectual Clearinghouse for Americans Conservatives. So a Heritage Fellow said here, he argued that immigration reform would end up costing the U.S. $6.3 trillion in lost productivity and social programs because Latino immigrants are a burden on society. In a first, blacks voted at a higher rate than whites. African Americans turned out at a record 66%. So last November, they voted at a higher rate than whites for the first time in history. Italy's first black minister target of racist insult. A far-right group in Italy has unfolded a racist banner insulting the country's first black cabinet minister, Kyenge, who recently sworn in under the new government. It says here, the banner says, Kyenge, go back to Congo, says the banner. She was born eye doctor born in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The group also released a statement saying you cannot sell off Italian citizenship to elements that are foreign to our culture, just as we cannot force citizens to applaud a multiracial society. Speaking of the Congo, we have this. The UN girls as young as 6 raped by Congo troops. Congo troops fleeing the M23 rebels last November raped at least 97 women and 33 girls, some as young as 6, says the UN report. Purity culture, bad for women, worse for survivors of sexual assault, says here that virginity has no bearing on a person's worth, yet purity balls and shaming victims make our culture more medieval than modern. I don't know why I'm seeing this theme out there right now, but it says here, where does a woman's value lie? It says, according to right-wing culture warriors, between her legs. So to me, this is kind of a gross oversimplification of an idea or fundamental. It says here that that she was raped repeatedly. She described how her religious background made her feel worthless after the first rape. Please join me in the next part. Thank you.